I'm doing this for myself. I don't care what other people think. I'm just being myself. It's my life and I can do what I want. I'm willing to bet you've heard some of the previous statements before, especially if you live in a society that encourages individualistic self-expression. I'm going to put aside speculations of whether or not and to what extent individualism as a whole is good or bad for today's topic. I'm rather focusing on developing an understanding of self-expression as it presents itself in individualistic societies. Self-expression can be defined as the expression of one's feelings, thoughts, or ideas, especially in writing, art, music, or dance. Self-expression, by definition, is an act of externalizing a part of one's self. It is a display and a projection made by an individual to the external world. So it seems to me that as much as self-expression is deemed to be an act done for the development of the self, it is also an act done to portray something to others. Now, let's tie this back to individualism and the common statements such as "I'm doing this for myself" and "I don't care what other people think." Whenever I hear such statements, especially when paired with militant individualistic attitudes, I can't help but feel critical. I find myself asking, is that person really doing XYZ just for themselves? If so, why are they so adamant on publicly sharing this part of themselves? What even is the point of actively choosing to share something if it is not, at least in part, meant to reach someone? Would this person act this way if they lived in seclusion and had no reason to externalize themselves? And do they really not care what people think? I'm not really sure what the general answer to these questions is, or if there even is an answer that would apply to most people, since self-expression is a highly personal thing. I can, however, hypothesize a provisional answer that I assume many people, especially women, can relate to. Consider appearance-based forms of self-expression, so things like makeup and clothes. I am rather dubious that most women alter their appearance or dress a certain way purely for themselves. I'm rather blunt in admitting that I don't, at least. I do not think that most women alter their appearance or dress a certain way purely for others, either. It's likely somewhere in between. And this can be easily found out by common defenses that women make for their self-expression choices. For example, they will say, "I put on makeup and I dress this way for myself. It's my body and it's my choice what to do with it." This probably sounds all powerful and convincing to most perceivers, but I'm not totally convinced that that's it. Consider how these women will expand on their defenses by saying that they choose what they choose because it makes them feel good. This is predictable, but insufficient. I'm going to dig deeper and ask, why does it make them feel good? There is nuance here that I think is worth exploring. Really, why does it make them feel good? Is it not, in part, because they are expecting a certain external response to their expressions? Is their anticipation of such a response not a core driver to their choices in the first place? As annoying as it is to admit, they may be looking to get validation, or admiration, or attraction, or respect, or even shock from others. Whatever it may be, I suspect almost everyone desires to appear a certain way, and is expecting something by doing so. This does not mean that their self-image is dependent on how the outside world perceives them. It just means that they probably do care how the outside world perceives them, and thus, they make intentional choices to try and send out a certain message about themselves. Whether or not that message is reached is not fully in their control, but I think they should at least be aware of their intentions and take responsibility for their choices of self-expression. Taking responsibility, in general, involves owning up to the consequences of your actions and decisions. Taking responsibility for self-expression means accepting and maturely dealing with the consequences of your choices of expressions. It usually just takes a bit of common sense to predict how you may be perceived if you choose to present yourself a certain way. You can either deal with this with an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. If you choose to deal with it with an internal locus of control, you'll realize that you are partially responsible for how your choices of self-expression are affecting your life and perhaps bringing upon you undesired judgments. Thus, you make an effort to change yourself from the inside out and re-present yourself to the world. Or, if you choose to deal with it with an external locus of control, you'll blame the external world for misrepresenting and misunderstanding you, and you will be rebellious towards society until it changes itself and is more accepting of you. In any case, you can't do whatever you want and expect people to respect you. I'm not saying you should not be respected or that you are not worthy of respect. I'm just saying you can't expect respect. The same way individuals want to be free to express themselves however they please, other individuals are free to judge these expressions however they please, even if they are wrong in their judgments. They ideally should not act upon their judgments by somehow discriminating against you or disrespecting you, but you cannot stop them from assuming things about you. Realize that you do not live in seclusion and that your expressions have an impact on others. You might find that if you understand this impact better, you'll alter the way you express yourself because this alteration will be a more accurate and more noble expression of who you are. But maybe you don't care about the impact your self-expressions have or about judgments, even if they are wrong. In that case, good for you, I guess. You're certainly a minority, and the external response to your expressions shouldn't faze you in the slightest. It is quite likely that you don't even feel the need to express yourself. But if you're like most of us, you do care. You try to convince yourself and others that you don't, but you do. And that's okay. It's human. As appealing as it is to try to assert yourself as a strong, independent, autonomous individual, it's also somewhat dehumanizing. Perhaps what would truly make you strong and independent is being honest with yourself about your intentions and realizing your partial dependency on others and admitting things that make you uncomfortable and making peace with it all instead of denying it. By all means, though, do whatever you want. But the next time you want to upload that picture or dye your hair purple or sing that song or post that status update, just ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Also ask yourself if you are willing and capable of dealing with the consequences of your action. If you're uncomfortable with the answer, you might want to reconsider your choices.